Okay, Bob.
Hallelujah. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, if not, we'll wave the white flag. I am very awed that so many people come out to hear an old dude like me, 101 years old, to hear my views on celibacy, chastity, sex, sexuality, homosexuality, transgenderism, vocation, God's will, truth, and all of that. I'm amazed. By the way, I'd like to talk, and at the end of my talk, I have my colleague, Dr. Waldo, who will give a few words about anatomy, and about physiology, and about biology. And afterwards, we're going to have a lot of questions. I know when you get to be 101, you recognize something. You don't know anything. That's the big deal. You don't know anything. All we can do is ask questions. We'd like to do that. And there are a million answers. Now, I would like to talk about all that stuff. There's not time, don't worry. We'll quit after a while. But we'll have questions afterwards for Walter and myself. However, underneath all those things I mentioned, there's an underlying something. That's in everything. In fact, it's the meaning of the whole thing. When I was in the seminary, I'll tell you what it is, they told us, if you want to understand celibacy, if you want to understand chastity, you must know something about love. I want to talk to you about love in relation to all the problems human beings have. The only problem is, what is this thing called love? What is it? There are poets and writers and philosophers and all kinds of people. This is my idea. This is my idea. What is it? Distortion is very possible. Give me a minute to make a distinction. There is a thing called illusion, which is not really the truth. It looks like something. Take a stick, put it in water, looks like it's bent, but it's not bent. By the refraction of light rays, it looks bent. It's an illusion. On the other hand, there's a thing called delusion, which is a false reality. You look at that bent stick and the guy says, it is bent, yes it is. I believe it is. It isn't, kid. It only looks like it's bent. So there is a distinction. It's an illusion, it's a delusion, and there's reality. You will never, ever understand celibacy or chastity or anything unless you understand love. But what is this thing called love? I can refer you to a great apostle, my patron, Paul, in 1 Corinthians 13. Love is kind, love is patient, love is not puffed up, and all of that, a little lofty. I can refer you to Scott Peck. Have you ever heard of Scott Peck? Scott Peck was a psychiatrist who wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled, in which he says, love is the willingness to exert oneself for the welfare, the spiritual welfare of another. Make distinctions, please. This is not lust. This is not selfishness. This is somehow thinking about the other guy And if you understand, it's about the other person. Hence, I'm going to speak as a Catholic. That's what I am. That's what I believe in. Though I'm half a Jew, hope that's okay. I'm half Jewish. I might as well tell you my real name is Rosenblum. My daddy and mommy were in vaudeville. You're all too young to know what that is. That's a form of Americana of the theater. They did all kinds of things. And by the way, on the bill in vaudeville, they always had somebody called a female impersonator. Big sign, female impersonator. And a gal came out, dressed like a woman, heavily made up, great dancer, singer, laughing. Everybody knew. This isn't a woman. This is a guy in a dress. It's a big sign. Impersonator. It's an illusion. They used to have a thing called sawing a woman in half. They saw her right in half. It looks like she's being sawn in half, but she's not. It's a trick. But illusion says she's being torn in half, but she's not. So I want to point out the pursuit here, the search, has to be about the truth. I'm a Catholic, I'm an old dude, and I'm searching for the truth. What are answers? Who has answers? I will ask you all kinds of questions. What do you want? What are you looking for? What are you seeking? What makes you happy? What does it mean to be happy? A couple of examples. I'm also a shrink. Forgive me for that. I am an expander. I am not a shrink. I want to open us up to the truth. There was a guy, a great friend of mine, happily married, and he talked about his wife, and he said, the greatest gift I have is my wife. Not my kids, not my job, not my this, not my that, my wife! The one I love. And a successful marriage. I had a buddy, probably my best friend, who was a surgeon. He had, hold your heart, 12 kids. 12 kids, 43 grandchildren. The kids were all aces. And the mother and the father were very, very close. Nobody would ever cut between them. You know, don't fool around. One night at their house, I was having dinner with them, all the kids around the table. She brings him a big platter, steaming meat, smells terrific. And he says, ooh, Mom, that makes me hot for your body. And all the kids cheer. Wow, isn't that great? There's not going to be a single Sullivan in this family. They all married. I married all 12 of them off. But they're all healthy. Ladies and gentlemen, you are not angels. Nor are you Hugh Heffernan. Is that his name? Yeah. You know the guy, Hugh Hef, the guy, the great sex guy. You are a combination of the physical and the spiritual. That's who you are, that's who I am. And to deny that we have a physical, sexual nature is a little bit insane. It's delusion. We are sexual beings. And that tremendous drive to replicate your DNA is enormous. And it wants to have its fruition. And God means a lot to me, and I know to you. God says that drive is to be confined exclusively in the sacrament of marriage, not elsewhere. Which leads me to the other problem, rationalization. The human being engages in a lot of pastime, that making a noble reason for the evil that I do. Person says, I'm beating my kid to death to teach him respect for law and order, teach obedience. Really, I find out the guy's beating his kid because the guy's a sadist. He enjoys beating kids up. It makes it look good. So, somebody in this celibacy thing, somebody in this Hugh Heffernan thing, says, after all, God loves all of us. I am God's child. I have a right to love. Well, how dare the Catholic Church? How dare you interfere with my right to love? I have a right to be a lover. We do, but it's appropriate lover. If God means anything, he's the one who is the criterion of the whole thing. It is God, not man, who decides. Of course, if you're crazy enough, like me, just happy to follow God's law, I love my king, but I love my God more. You want to do that, you pay for it. There's a price. You follow God right down the line, you pay for it, they will let you get away with it. If you do the right thing, what he says, not emotion, not sentimentality, not the progressive idea, not woke, it is Almighty God who decides these things. So, something like homosexuality, something like transsexuality, something like masturbation, pornography, all of these things violate God's law. Only today, the Holy Mass, the liturgy, the Mass, one of the patrons of courage, St. Charles and his companions in Africa, these men who died rather than give up their chastity. In this Mass today, we started off with the letter of St. John, and he says, the way you know that you love God is keep his commandments. Jesus says elsewhere, if you love me, if you do. Don't give me that baloney about I'm different, I should be accepted, and have a heart, be a little compassionate. Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments. Which obviously says, if you don't keep his commandments, you're saying, I don't love you. I'm mouthing it. I'm lip-syncing. I don't really love you. So ladies and gentlemen, when I talk about celibacy, chastity, a lot of kinds of things. I happen to be somebody who is a celibate. I was a voluntary celibate. There are some people who are involuntary celibates. You know, in the old days when I was a dirty neck kid on the street, we used to call these people the reluctant virgins. That they would like to get married. But for some reason or another, they didn't. And they might get bitter, might get angry. That's celibacy. A person like me, for example, I'm in consecrated celibacy. I bet a lot of you are too. People who are in private life decide, for their own reasons, they will be chaste. They will renounce marriage between them and God. But one thing to watch, if we say that celibacy could mean the state of not being married, such a celibate could be unchaste. We know people who are not married who are unchaste. And on the other hand, there's a whole notion of chastity, which is an integrative virtue, which brings everything together and points right at God. Now, sexual chastity would be in relation to continence, purity, protecting one's virginity, etc. But you could have chaste people who are not celibate. So what do you mean when you say you're celibate? What do you mean when you say you're chaste? So I want to draw two ways of life, try to illustrate something. Religious people, let me say, those in formal religion, take the vow, promise, oath. I will be celibate. I will renounce marriage, children, family, freedom, because I want to love God. The person in marriage says, I love marriage. I love having sex. I love having children. I love these things, and I am chaste as long as I am faithful to God and God's law. So you've got this kind of problem. So we're into all kinds of stuff, and I have to come down to something which is very tough, which is the call of God. God says to somebody, I want you to be chaste. I want you to be celibate. I'm going to set it up in such a way that you will be. And your job is to cooperate. And ladies and gentlemen, you know that I say we're not angels, we're not you Heffernan, we're a combination of everything. And we are expected on our parts to do God's will. You can't say, I'm going to say my prayers, and that's enough. You can't do that. You say, I'm going to say my prayers, but I'm going to depend on God's grace. Two together, it's a team. You say you're going to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, you'll never do it. I see people say, I will never do that again. You know, with the clenched fist. That means you will. You're going to do it again. Person is into himself. That's why, for example, masturbation is so evil, because it goes back to the self. If we talk about love going out, it's from me to you. Now, what about love? What about the meaning of love? What does it mean? Now, people in the military, they have love for each other. I was with the police department for 20 years. These cops love each other. Grandparents love grandchildren, and so on. Friends love friends, but there's nothing sexual, nothing genital about this. It's a spiritual kind of thing. I was just thinking about being called when I was 21. You know, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was in what they call anomie, a state of indecision. Well, what am I going to do with my life? I'm in the ROTC, I have a career in military. Somebody offered me, believe it or not, 4 years through medical school. Pay all my debts, everything. My mother and father in the theater said, come join us. We'll have a lot of fun in the theater. We'll put you in our gig and all of that. What am I going to do with myself? Somehow, the Holy Spirit of God says to me, you will renounce all of that. And you will be a priest. Well, I don't want to be a priest. I'm not interested in being a priest. I don't care what you want. I chose you. You didn't choose me. And similarly here, ladies and gentlemen, in this group here, I will confidently say, God has chosen somebody here to a certain way in life. He says, I've chosen you. You said, I want to do that. Hey, wait a minute, don't give me any lip. I want you to do my will. I want you to do what I want. You get into this sexuality thing, it's a killer, because it's such a huge need of the human being to want to replicate oneself. This is what it's about, and to be companion. For example, when Dr. Walter comes and gives a little insight about this whole structure, males and females. Say, by the way, there are only two. There are males and there are females, within which category are endless calibrations. But there are not many, many different species. There are only two species. One genus, two species. That's what it's about. But he will give the scientific background. I speak as a Jew. I'm also Irish. I gotta say that too. I'm partly Irish. event, it's a call. So anybody here who's struggling with the call, should I or should I not be celibate in the fullest sense of the term? Or, more properly, should I be chaste? Should I be chaste? If I say I should, why? Why should you be chaste? What's the point of being chaste? You've got to have a reason. Our holy faith, the Catholic faith says, do have a reason for what you do. You must have a reason within you, kind of thing. So I'm sorting this all out. It's a melange of all kinds of things that I throw to you. But, what I found out in my years of trying to persuade people, number one, I don't persuade anybody of anything, but when I give a talk, I note that after about 20 minutes, people fall into a kind of a dream. Everybody kind of falls asleep after 20 minutes. So I have been talking now for 20 minutes. I think some of you are half asleep. I don't know if you know what I said, you're even interested. But I'm going to ask my buddy, Dr. Waldo, to come here and speak a little bit about the physical background, particularly anatomy. I'm doing things on transgenderism and delusion, but he gives the background, the scientific background. So Waldo, come over here and say a little bit more.
Good to be here. Very impressed with this. So many young people. They are ready to hear about chastity in New York City. That's very impressive. I'm impressed. And the other day I was speaking with Father Lloyd about different issues, and he mentioned this invitation that he got from you about this talk, and he was talking to me about this fantasy and delusion, all of that. Then he said, maybe you can come. I don't know. I go to medical rounds. I've been in medical rounds, but I haven't been in a nice group like this. And then I say, so here I am. So I'll say a couple of words. The main thing that I want to do is just, I want to remind you. You have studied this in biology, in middle school, or in high school. I just want to remind you the very basic things of biology. I am a pediatrician. I did practice pediatrics for many years, and I did my residency at Downstate and Kings County Hospital. It's like a war zone, that area. It used to be. But when I did a residency in part in neonatology. Neonatology is the medicine of the newborn. I have been many times in the delivery room. And in the delivery room you have the mother that's going to deliver the baby, the obstetrician that is helping the mother, helping the lady, the mother to deliver the baby, and the pediatrician like me that's ready to hold the baby and examine him as soon as he's born. So I have done many times this, and one thing very impressive, as soon as the baby is born, you hear the first cry. That's a good sign. The baby is breathing. You put the baby on the table, you examine him, you make sure that he's breathing well, and his heart rate is 150 or 200, which is normal for a baby. In an adult, it's 70, 80, that's normal. For a baby, 150 is perfectly normal, and 200 beats per minute. So you check that, you stabilize the baby, then you do the physical examination. You have to check if there are obvious abnormalities, like supernumerary fingers, if they have cleft palate, are they going to be able to suck the milk? And then you go to the genitals. You examine the genitals, and if there is any abnormality. In the boys, we have to make sure that the testicles are descended, are in the pouches that call scrotum next to the penis. So we have to make sure that it's there. Otherwise, he might need the baby an operation later on, or when he's pubescent, to bring the testicles down, because there is the problem of sterility when the testicles are not in the right place of the body. So you examine that, you make sure that you do the physical examination in the new baby, and then the baby is sent to the neonatal ward, and then they are released or they are discharged in 2 or 3 days. At the time of discharge, you give the certificate to the baby. We say baby boy or baby girl, the birth weight, the length, the head circumference, and then we attach to that not the thumbprint, but the print of the footprint. The fingers of the babies are too small. You cannot do print. They are still information or the ridges, etc. So that is the identity of the baby, and the parents leave the hospital with an identity of their baby, a baby boy or baby girl. Another aspect of medicine that's fascinating is genetics. In genetics, we talk about the DNA, the desoxyribonucleic acid, that is located in the cell. The cell is the main unit of the body. We have trillions of cells, each of us. So in that cell, if you imagine a fried egg, the white part and the nucleus of the cell in this case is the yellow part. So the cell is so important. It's the unit on which is built our bodies. In that nucleus is the DNA, desoxyribonucleic acid, which is formed of many amino acids, molecules of carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen. I'm not going to tire you with all this. But it's good to know the desoxyribonucleic acid. This is tucked inside the chromosomes. Each cell in the body has the chromosomes. We have, I think, 10 trillion of cells, each one of us. And in the cell, we're talking about the nucleus and the desoxyribonucleic acid, the DNA, the chromosomes. And these chromosomes are 46 in each of us. Each cell of us has 46 chromosomes plus XX or XY. The XX is for the female, XY for the male. So all the cells on our bodies they have that tag. I can't say, I don't know if it's a medical word in this case, but they have this XXXY. So that is science, that is the reality, men and female. And then another aspect about the chromosomes. The chromosomes in the mother that are forming the ovary, when we have the cell, which is the egg, and in the male we have the testicles, they are going to form the spermatocytes. In order for them to get together, they have to split their chromosomes. If all of us have 46 chromosomes, for the baby, in this case, the father has to have 23 chromosomes XX, and the mother has to have, the mother likewise, the mother has to have 23 chromosomes XX, and the father has to have 23 chromosomes XY. When they get together, these two cells, we have the 46 chromosomes, either XX, XY, what the nature will choose at that time. So another aspect of biology is the communication between these cells. These cells are communicated through the blood. They are communicated through a net of the nervous system, And another form of communication are the hormones. The hormones are these substances that are produced from the glands. For example, if I am fearful of something, the hypophysis in a fearful situation sends the message to the suprarenal capsules to produce a hormone that's called norepinephrine and epinephrine. If you are fearful, the epinephrine is come pouring to the system. So then what happened? It manifested in a heart rate very high, breathing heavily, the circulation, the arteries become closed, and you become very attentive to deal with the fearful situation. That is the epinephrine, the hormone epinephrine that has been released from the suprarenal capsules. In the case of a young person, how this thing happens, how the hormones act. The main thing is to speak in this case of the sexual hormones. The hormone by essence in the woman is the estrogen and progesterone. So they are produced in the ovaries. The ovaries not only produce the cell, but they produce these two hormones, but also produce a little bit of testosterone, but mainly the two female hormones, estrogen and progesterone. And in the male, the hormone is testosterone. So the effect of these hormones on the body of the person that is no longer a baby, it's become prepubescence, pubescence, adolescence, whichever. At that time, the body has grown up so much that they are ready to receive the stimulation of the hormones, of the sexual hormone, estrogen and progesterone in the female and estrogen in the male. So the effect of these hormones is magical. So the effect in every part of the body. You see the effect of the estrogen and progesterone in the voice of a woman is very high-pitched voice. The effect on the skin is smooth the skin, the hair, silky hair, the young people. What about the effect on the bone? The bones in the female, they increase in length, in strength, and then the muscles likewise increase in number and strength. Not as much as in the men, as I'm going to mention immediately, but what happens in the women is the fat cells increase, especially targeted to certain areas of the body, in this case, the breast area and the pelvic area. And another thing is, again, when the estrogen and progesterone at the end of the cycle comes the menopause, it comes, everything keeps decreasing in energy and everything. So you know that. In the men, what is the effect of testosterone? As far as the voice become very deep. The vocal cords become thicker, and the voice is low pitch. And then we have, as far as the muscle strength increase dramatically, and not so much the fat cells, they are distributed more uniformly. And as far as the intellect in women by the estrogen and progesterone is significant. They become more alert, more intelligent. Likewise, the testosterone, the effect on the body is significant. The brain, just alertness, sharpness. So there is difference, dramatic difference between, significant difference, I would say, between two sexes. So this is in general what I wanted to say. Then before I finish, I want to read what I got from Planet Parenthood, Sex, Gender and Identity. What are the differences between sex, gender and gender identity? It is common for people to confuse sex, gender and gender identity, but they are actually all different. Sex is the level, male or female, that you are assigned by a doctor at birth, based on the genitals you are born with and the chromosomes that you have with your sperm. It goes in your birth certificate. Gender, on the other hand, is much more complex. It has social and legal status and set the expectations from society about behavior, characteristics, and thoughts. Each culture has its standards about the way the people should behave based on their gender. This is also generally male or female, in fact, in relation to the gender. But instead of being about parts of the body, it is more about how you are expected to act because of your sex. Finally, gender identity. Gender identity is how you feel. It's about feelings in this case. Feeling inside of you what your interests, what are your interests as far as clothing, behavior, and personal appearance. It is a feeling that being cemented very early in life, in adolescence, I would say. So with this, I give you a very quick idea. I remind you a little bit of biology. It's such a great privilege for me to talk with Father Lloyd. I never spoke with an audience like that. I was mostly in medical rounds with nurses, doctors, but to see a people that want chastity in life, oh my God, this is significant. And this is the right man. I know Father Lloyd for many years. It is the real thing. A truth teller, and we need priests and men like him. Very great honor for me to be with him, and let's listen what the Father has to tell more about it. Okay, thank you.
Gentlemen, I beg your indulgence. I want to ask Waldo a question in the light of what he just said. Waldo, Dr. Waldo, there is floating around a rumor that a man can conceive a child. He can bear a child and give birth to a child. In the light of what you said, that rumor seems utterly fantastic. And his fantasy, it seems insane. What is your reaction?
Well, what you said, Father, I think that is a delusion. So you are trying to see something that is not there. Where biologically, anatomically, we are male and female. But from there are many problems with homosexuality, transgender, all these things. There are psychological problems. I'm not condemning them, but it has to be some help for them. It cannot be just all parades, things like that. But you have to go deep down what you are looking for, what you want, the question that you ask, Father. And I think that's very important.
Thank you. It's very helpful. You know. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we got a lot of time here. What do we? Not too much. How about you asking us questions or giving your own viewpoint? Because after all, people have views all over the place. There's no one viewpoint. We're all supposed to be asking, what about this? Where do I fit and all of that? I have a friend here who asked me a lot of questions and is a very intelligent guy. That's what I hear. Ken has a lot of questions. What do you think, Ken?
Well, I'll phrase it as a distinction, perhaps. I like to remind people, as I often have to do because they don't understand it, all men and women are called to chastity. I was a little bit confused at the beginning when you said you're called to chastity, you're called to celibacy. But not all men and women are called to celibacy. So you can live a chaste life within a marriage, but you're also required to lead a chaste life outside of a marriage, even though you
Right.
Celibacy is sort of a subdivision of chastity. And then just make one other comment on you mentioned M. Scott Peck, and somebody that I'm familiar with is Conrad Barrs, a psychiatrist, and he would point out a type of love, what he called a restraining love. Not where you restrain the love, but the manifestation of the love. And that is the basis of, let's say, natural family planning between married people that are otherwise, entitled to have sexual relations, but if they want to avoid having children, out of love for the other, each other, they avoid sexual relations during that period. There's also kind of an explanation for courtship. Today people say, oh, we love one another, so we have to have sex, No, if you really love one another, you wish good for yourself and the other, you will restrain the manifestation of that love when that manifestation would be improper.
Right.
So I'll leave my comment with that.
So Ken said to remember that chastity is everybody's obligation. There is no exception. No matter what the apparent deficiency is, everybody is obligated, only if you believe in God. Everyone is obligated to chastity. And secondly, sometimes love says you don't manifest something. For example, when people are planning their births in the family, they simply do not have sex at certain times. You don't do something if you love. So, okay. Now, the lady in the back.
Hi. So something I know.
That's loud for me.
I know a lot of my friends and I kind of grapple with these questions. How do we, in a practical way, because a lot of times we get these answers of like discern for yourself or things like that. How do we practically maintain being people of like peace and people of love when we confront people that are clearly living in delusion? This is New York City. I work every day with people, and I have to, whether it's address like their gender identity rather than like what is true, or like it's a lot of allowances on our part. So how do we maintain that while still being people of truth?
Now, I am very sorry to tell you I'm so deaf. I'd like you to come closer to me. I'm 101 years old.
I know.
Tell me what you said. Get over here.
Yeah. I'm a young lady, and I live in New York with a lot of people with like a transgender identity. And of course, I want to be a person of love. I want to be a person of peace.
Right.
I don't want to be combative with anyone.
Okay.
Especially that are clearly hurting, but how do we still root ourselves in truth?
Very good. Okay, first of all, in terms of respect and sensitivity, if, as Dr. Warner pointed out, it's insane to talk about a man conceiving a baby. It's insane. However, if somebody thinks that, can we treat him with compassion and respect? Because you disagree, you don't insult people. Because it is true that God loves everybody. There is no distinction. However, there are responsibilities. It's not enough to say God loves everybody, do whatever you want. It's not enough. It is an obligation for people like Walter, myself, Ken, to speak up and say, what do we think is God's will? What does God want from me? How you balance that is a tough deal. You are not allowed to insult. You're not allowed to put people down because they differ, or because they have a different point of view, they live differently. You can't do that if you believe in God. So I think the criterion is, what is your faith level? Because if it's emotion, it's movable. If it's consensus, it will change, whatever the consensus becomes. Because there were times when people would be put to death just for these abnormalities. So I'm with you, but there's also push it further. Half-truth is not good. Can't just pick me up on something that wasn't wide enough was correct. Let's push it to the truth and not be afraid. And that's probably most of our problem. We're afraid to say anything. Why? Because I might be punished. That's not Christian. You can't be a coward. You can't be a wimp. You got to say what you think, what you believe with compassion. So how we do that is everybody's problem. Somebody else, please. Let me get this over. Come on,
I want to ask the doctor, is there a chromosomal abnormality in the homosexual people?
No, there isn't.
They
It
are
hasn't been
identified.
demonstrated, no. Yes.
Well, let me get Keith first. Keith said something, yeah? Yeah, come on.
I read something recently by St. Augustine, which kind of amazed me. He said that obviously you have the soul and the body, and you hear a lot about the theology of the body nowadays. But in his opinion, the vilest, and I want to say this correctly because it's confusing, but the vilest soul is more excellent than the most perfect body or the most excellent body. Now that struck me because I spent a lot of time at the gym where you really see gender differences, by the way. You know, you see the guys with tremendous muscles and the ladies are not quite so developed. So to me, and this is an argument, a very philosophical argument in favor of women not following Catholic type role models. And the quote is from William Penn, who said that in souls there is no sex. And that may well be true, but in this life we're called to live in a body. And so what I'm trying to say, I guess, is that my experience is that some people fit the mold better than other people more easily, and then other people are more challenged. There could be physical anomalies. You could come from a family that, what do they call it, a dysfunctional family. Anyway, there are all sorts of challenges that people have, and I think the idea of the courage apostolate to me is, how do you learn the means of obtaining the grace that you need to face your particular challenges?
You know, because I think the solution, from my point of view, is spiritual. I mean, we love science. I'm a psychologist myself. It's a wonderful thing. But spiritual, the real solution or resolution is in God. And so how do you handle this stuff? I'm saying that how you open your heart. You say, dear Lord, help me. Do whatever to me, whatever you need to have me love you. But it's a tough one. One thing we do know, do not judge. Don't judge anybody. Because you do not know how anybody stands before God. Even though we can say theologically, with the cerebral part, it's material sin. I don't know if it's subjective sin before God. For example, the homosexual behavior. I am dead set against saying that homosexual lovemaking is okay with God. I think it's wrong. Clearly stated by God. Someone else says, no, it is not. Okay, that's not my place. My place is to state what we as Catholics, this is what we teach. Whether people accept it or not is their business. So no judgments, no putting anybody down, in fact, no argument. You all know Big Bill O'Reilly. Remember Big Bill O'Reilly? from one of the cable stations. Big Bill's a great arguer, convince nobody. The arguments don't do anything. It's dialogue. Do we know how to dialogue? I'll listen to you with respect, and you listen to me, and then we honestly try the best we can to be honest with ourselves. Pretty tough to do. This lady wanted to say something. Didn't you want to say something?
Yeah.
Please.
What's the difference?
Remember, I'm a deaf old dude.
What's the difference between chastity and celibacy?
Again?
What's the difference between chastity and celibacy?
Chastity and celibacy? Well, it depends on how you define them. If you define celibacy as simply being unmarried, that's one way of looking at it. I'm simply not married. These people are celibate, they're not married. Or you can say like me, I call it consecrated celibacy. I'm not married, but in addition to that, I want to follow the laws of God in relation to chastity. Somebody would like to get married, but can't. Suppose somebody's very shy. The guy's very shy, doesn't know how to approach a woman. He'll go all his life unmarried, a bit bitter. He's celibate, but it's not joyfully so. I'm speaking here about a joyful kind of celibacy. Even though as a young guy, I didn't want to be a priest. I'm not interested in being a priest. Until I find out it's the greatest thing I ever did. But I didn't know that. So there's a very real difference depending on how you define it. Sometimes we talk this way. We talk right past each other, using the same word, like a Rorschach test. What do you see in that word? What does it mean to love? A million different viewpoints. So first of all, what do you mean when you say I love you? What does that mean? Did you love a tree? Do you love a dog? Love a book? Love a country? Scott Peck says no. Other people say yes. So what are we talking about? It's very hard until we reach some kind of a common understanding. Somebody else had something. Yes,
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned earlier about involuntary celibate.
Close?
Oh, yeah. I'll try to be as close as possible. Yeah, you mentioned earlier about involuntary celibates.
Yes.
I come from a generation that kind of prides on involuntary, that they call incels. And there's a tendency along a lot of these involuntary celibates, they have a lot of bitterness, and they end up turning towards bad solutions, homosexuality, transsexuality, or resentment towards the other gender.
Yeah.
What advice would you give towards these types of people? Are they lacking some sort of grace, or are they not following a certain vocation towards actual celibacy? What would you recommend for
That's a
people?
big question, and I think instead of the quick, easy way of running into the fantasy of porno, some people who are involuntary will go to porno. Because that was a fantasy, I am champion, I am king, I run the world. And things went deeper into it and alienates one more and more. I'm saying to be able to talk it out, we are always better than we seem. There was a guy named Sig Freud who had a great expression. He said, things are never only what they seem. So it looks like this person's just a loser. He's a loser. He's a wallflower. Well, he's not. There's more to him than what appears. So I am of the encouraging side. I would say, hey, look, let's do some talking about this. Let's go somewhere to get some kind of solution to learn how to do this. How do you say hello? Some people can't say hello because they're afraid, because they don't trust themselves. You know what it is? It's a lack of self-esteem. Way down deep, do you love yourself? That's the question. And the smartest people can say I have low self-esteem. That's nuts. And yet before God, as Catholics, we say everybody is priceless in God's sight. Once I think that, hey, there must be something about me that's good. The other thing is the self-fulfilling prophecy. A person says, I just know you won't like me. I just know it. You know what happens? You don't like me. Because I commanded you to not like me. And these vibes go out. And so you must say, God loves me. I'm a pretty good dude. You like me. The first thing you know, people can say, yeah, you really are. But the person who was convinced way down in the guts, that's where the action is. In the guts, not up here. It's in the guts. The person says, I'm a bum. I'm no good. I'm rotten. You think I'm nice. You ought to know what I'm really like. You wouldn't like me then. Not true. There's all this very difficult, complex, subtle stuff. I recommend talking about it. You know, I remember when I was in college, I had such a great difficulty talking in front of a group until I got to be a big mouth. And I talked before cardinals and archbishops, I was telling them all what they had to do. Where'd that come from? It comes from growth, from maturity. So when I say I'm no good, I'm a bum, you won't like me, I'm immature. I have not grown. A person has to learn I am okay. It's more than that. I am lovable before God. It's a big question. It ain't easy. If whoever problem that is, it was mine, good luck. Because there's a lot to be done. Somebody else, please.
How does one develop the virtue of, how does one develop the virtue of chastity in a joyful way, and so that it leads to joy?
Joyful chastity.
Pardon?
Chastity that is joyful. How do you become joyful?
For many people,
It's the sense of being with God. No matter what the atheist or pseudo-atheist says, if you feel right with the universe, i.e. God, if you feel right, you say, things are good, I can relax. I don't have to be afraid. The person who is uptight, you know, he can easily seek release in illicit stuff, like masturbation or porno. A lot of people who use porno and masturbate are very lonely people, and not people who reach out. The more you reach out of yourself, the more joyful you get. The more you become a loner, you're going to get bored with yourself. Remember the old story? When this ingenue was at a night show, and she said, I'm in therapy, I'm trying to find myself. And the guy said, babe, when you find yourself, you're going to be pretty disappointed. You know? On the contrary, I said, the more you find yourself, you find you're not bad. I had a buddy of mine at Iona, he used to look in the mirror every day and say, not bad. That is, that I do have limitations. And probably, spiritually, the resolution is learning what the virtue of humility means. Humility means nothing more than reality. I am a bum in some things I do or don't do, but I'm terrific in other things. Not to be afraid to tell the truth to oneself. That's the big deal. I am afraid of what I might find. And I'm saying, don't be afraid. Just jump. Just jump into this whole thing and say, I'm trusting God. I'm going to look at me. And yes, I have this crazy inclination. I'm nasty to people. Okay, so I'm that way. But unless I know it, I'm not going to do much about it. So I am suggesting psychologically, I believe in counseling. We're all a little nuts. Because after all, remember that we're all from original sin. Everybody's a little bit crazy. And that's okay. See, the problem is if you say there should be nothing wrong with me, that is nonsense. There is no such thing as a person who's perfect. There is no such thing. We're all a little bit off the mark. And if I can say it's okay to be a little crazy, all right, be a little crazy. But I also have wonderful things about me. Can you learn to be content with who you are and develop the good side rather than all this stuff, I gotta be perfect. You mustn't see my weaknesses. Why not? What are you gonna do to me? if you find out that I'm nasty. You do nothing to me. It's perfectly okay.